Welcome to That Deacon on YouTube. I'm here with a longtime parishioner from St. George's, John Green, who is retired from the judiciary, correct?
Correct.
And semi-retired as a lawyer.
Completely retired as a lawyer, but semi-retired because I'm working as the executive director of my Rotary Club.
Ah, okay. I thought you still dabbled in law. That's where I wasn't sure. But
No.
Oh, you're fully retired now. The reason we're here today is because I found out that you were part of the Peace Corps, and that just celebrated a mega anniversary not too long ago, but I think it's over 50 years now.
Yes.
It started in
I believe
61, I think.
That sounds right.
Yeah. So I wanted to find out about your experience with that because frankly, even though I've heard of it, I have never met anyone who was in the Peace Corps, believe it or not. I would think I would come across someone over my life, but I hadn't. So I would like you to share a little bit about the Peace Corps and your experience back then. So what year are we talking about?
I was in the Peace Corps from 1967 to 1970.
Okay, so it was around for a while. Like it started in 61 and then 67. Now, how did you have any idea about it? What drew you to it? I mean, did you just wake up one day and say, I'm going to be in the Peace Corps, or what? How did you come across it?
I think I started thinking about it during college and then applied during my junior year or senior year of college.
Uh-huh.
And I think it always seemed like a valuable thing to do. It seemed like a great adventure. It seemed like an important American initiative. And for all those reasons, I was interested in it. And then as the Vietnam War got more serious, I believe we were not doing the right thing in Vietnam, although my views on that have changed quite a bit. But,
interesting.
So I opposed the war in Vietnam. So basically, I ended up applying to the Peace Corps for three reasons. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up.
But you were in school.
Right. I'm saying
And what were you studying?
I was studying history
At
Stanford.
Yes, I wanted to get that in.
Okay.
That you went to Stanford. Oh, but you were history at first. Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think I was interested possibly in becoming a teacher at the time, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I ended up, before I left for Peace Corps, I took the law school admittance test, but I wasn't real interested in law at the time.
Really?
And the third reason was just adventure. Just I thought it would be fun and interesting and exciting.
Yeah. Did you get a deferment from the military if you were in the Peace Corps?
Yes, it was based on each local draft board made a decision on that. And my draft board for the first 2 years I was in the Peace Corps gave me a deferment. Most people are in just for 2 years. When I extended for a third year, they revoked my deferment, and at the end I came very close to being drafted, and I would have served if drafted.
Yeah. I think I was college deferment back then, very near the end of our experience in Vietnam. They were still drafting, but you could kind of see the writing on the wall. And then I got a letter saying my number was something like 24. I mean, it was, and then the president then stopped the draft, and we were like, oh, geez. I remember coming home from school, still living at home. I was going to community college then, just dreading to check the mailbox, when I came home. I remember that. So you had friends too, you said, I think in a casual conversation. You said you had other friends that were also looking at it, and no? I thought you had mentioned that.
I knew, in other words, at Stanford, in my sophomore and junior year, my understanding was about 10% of the Stanford graduating class went in the Peace Corps.
Oh, that's
So-
high.
So there were a lot of people that I knew. Stanford, I think each class, each year was 1,200 people, something like that.
Yeah.
So, maybe more than 100 people a year
Yeah,
would go
well,
in.
you said it just the way you mentioned it, not maybe I just inferred it. It was part of this culture of that time around the campus that people were aware of it. And
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So you sign up and you fill out everything. Now, do you get to choose where you go?
No, they asked you where you'd like to go, and the group I was in initially had maybe 25, 23 guys or so went to. It was all men in the malaria eradication program that I was in.
Oh, okay.
And of those, I don't remember anyone who said, besides myself, who said they'd asked for Thailand. I asked for Thailand. When I applied, I had a good friend named Dwight Clark who had been the dean of freshman men at Stanford, and he ran sort of a private Peace Corps called Volunteers in Asia. They were very active in Hong Kong and some other countries, and he had been to Thailand a little bit, and of the countries where the Peace Corps had programs in Southeast Asia, he recommended Thailand. And ultimately, a year after I got there, he came and visited me, and I realized how little he knew about. He'd just been there a little bit. And
Oh, wow.
That he really.
Why did he recommend Thailand then?
I think, probably for the same reason that many Americans like Thailand. The people are extremely friendly, hospitable. It's an interesting country and a pleasant place to be. And I think he felt there was still a need for American volunteers to lend a hand.
And so you choose Thailand, and then how long is the training before you go over there?
It's 3 months, and my program, we had training for 2 months in Hawaii and then 1 month in the Philippines. In Hawaii, we were in Hilo, Hawaii, and we stayed in a former naval hospital from World War II near a place called Rainbow Falls, which a tourist to Hilo might have been to. And we studied 5.5 days a week. We studied Thai 8 hours a day, 8 one-hour lessons, and we had other cross-cultural classes. And studying Thai was probably the hardest academic thing I've ever done. When I studied for the bar, I thought it was terrible, disgusting, ridiculous, but I would say, but not as hard as studying Thai.
Thai is to my ear, languages are musical in many ways, at least the way I hear them. And if you can get the flow of the language a bit, it helps you then to learn the vocabulary and pronunciation. Thai is so foreign to my musical ear that I can't distinguish certain words and phrases by inflection in that language. It's really, really unique.
It's a tonal language, and so the same word, and I can say this 5 different ways, but I can't tell you what they all mean. But there's a word cow, and you could say, I think cow, which I think means rice, and cow means something else, and cow with a low tone means something else.
It's like Chinese in that respect, the ma, the famous ma.
Okay. So
yeah.
So there's you could be at a restaurant and think you're ordering a delicious dish, and in fact you might be ordering something less respectable.
That is
and
cute.
which they would find amusing.
Yeah. When I had told you I have some Thai friends, we go out to dinner, and it's usually a Thai restaurant. I let them order, and everything they say to my ears sounds the same. It's like they have one phrase they repeat over and over and over again. Of course, every other word to my ear is cup, It's just so different. So I could see it being a very difficult language to learn. How did you do when you got there? I mean, school learning and actual language,
Right.
speaking a language are different things.
Right.
So how did
my
you
group,
do?
So during training, I was one of the worst at Thai of my group.
Oh, really?
And when I arrived there, I continued to be poor at first, but then as I learned, as I experienced how hospitable the Thais were and how forgiving they were about, massacring their language,
Yeah.
and how helpful they were, I really got into it. And so I worked, as I told you, in a program to eradicate malaria.
Yeah.
My zone was responsible for 1 million Thai citizens.
Wow.
We had about 300 personnel. We had a Thai director, zone chief, 2 assistant zone chiefs, and then 300 personnel. The zone chief was in his 60s. The assistant zone chiefs were in their 50s. I'm coming to answer your question, by the way. The assistant zone chiefs were in their 50s, and I was technically an assistant zone chief at age 22, speaking just pidgin Thai. And but from the beginning, everybody but my zone chief spoke Thai with me. My zone chief spoke English for the first 6 months, and then decided I could speak Thai well enough. They didn't want to bother. He didn't want to bother with English. And now I've forgotten your question, which was, how was I? So at the end of 2 years, when most of the people in my group left, I was one of the best in the group.
Isn't that amazing?
I tested, I think it was under the Foreign Service scale, I think I had a 2+, which I think supposedly was equivalent to a high school graduate, which I know I was not, but
You
in any
could
event,
fake it.
I don't know, but that's my recollection. Is that's what I know. I tested well, and I believe it was at that right. And that was
Wow.
because I learned that with the Thais, I would carry a notebook around, and if I heard a word I didn't know, I would ask them to repeat it for me, and then I would write it phonetically in English, and then I'd ask them to write it in Thai, which is a different script. Their alphabet has maybe 46 characters, and in Thai, like the word read might not in Thai, but let's pretend that English was set up the same way. The word read might be spelled E-R-A-D. So in other words, sometimes the second letter in the word is pronounced first, and then the letter before it. So
Wow.
and then there are parts of the consonant or the characters that appear below the word or above it, in addition to just accents and things.
Wow.
They taught us reading and writing 1 hour a day and speaking 7 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I never got real good at reading or writing, although I had a book that I used for malaria eradication, and I did have like a diagram of all the parts of a sprayer machine that were used and things, and what the Thai word for them was.
So that was your mission over there, to help with malaria.
Right, to eradicate malaria, yes.
And how did you do that? What was the...
So the Thais modeled their program after a program designed by the World Health Organization of the UN, and at the time, they may have known that DDT was controversial. I'm not sure, but in any event, DDT played an important role. And in fact, I've read recently that there are some people that say today that it might be worth bringing DDT back to continue an attack on malaria, because as bad as DDT is for causing cancer and things, that there are more deaths from malaria that might be prevented. But in any event, at the time, the areas with... the disease malaria is transmitted by the Anopheles mosquito, and if I have malaria and the mosquito bites me and then a minute later or a day later bites you, you will not get malaria. The disease has to develop within the mosquito for a number of days, depending on the temperature and other factors. It might be anywhere from 5 to 10 days. So if I have malaria and the mosquito bites me, if that mosquito can be killed before the gestation period, before the disease has developed to be transmittable, then you can cut the cycle. And the Anopheles mosquito would generally bite indoors and bite at night. So, and then rest on a wall inside a home or somewhere else for that at the time. And so we sent personnel around to the areas in our zone that had the greatest malaria transmission, the highest incidence, and they would, if they got the permission from the homeowner, they would spray DDT inside the home. And these were not, by and large, not fancy homes, but still DDT, although I don't think people realized that it had important toxic components, but it was dirty. But nevertheless, I think people, by and large, people cooperated because first of all, they didn't like mosquitoes just in an everyday sense. They didn't want to be bitten. And second of all, they didn't want to get malaria. So, and then once the transmission rate got lower, they'd stop spraying DDT, and we would send a worker around once a month to each home in the workers' district. And the worker would ask questions to determine whether anybody had been sick in the previous month. And if they had some or all of the symptoms of malaria, that's chills and fever, high temperature, other things, then they would take a blood slide. The blood slide would be sent back to a lab in the zone where I worked in the headquarters. And we had 8 or 10 microscopists, women, who would be examining these slides all day long. And if a slide came back positive for malaria, then we sent a worker back to the home with a 5-day supply of medicine to kill the malaria, or at least to eliminate to hopefully end malaria in them, but at least end the symptoms. So,
yeah.
So that's a very complicated process, and it sometimes was executed well and sometimes wasn't. But anyway, that was the theory.
But you tried.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how was the morale doing that once you got there?
Well, my sense is it's hard to compare how was the malaria program versus other programs in the Thai government, but I believe it was relatively efficient and effective, and good morale. Although in Thailand, I would say morale was based more on interpersonal relations and how everybody got along and things than on how well the mission was being executed. So in the U.S., you might ask somebody about their job, and they'd say, "Well, our job is to do X, and I think we're doing a terrific job at it. I don't particularly care for my coworkers." Well, a Thai wouldn't say that. If a Thai didn't care for his coworkers, then there wouldn't be much beyond that to discuss. I mean, they would never add, "Oh, by the way, we are fulfilling our mission," because interpersonal relations is a pretty key component of Thai life.
Yeah. And how was the group that you work with?
I like them.
From the U.S.
They were very knowledgeable. The Americans were. I like the other volunteers in my group very much. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you keep in contact with them over the years, or did you all go your separate ways?
Well, so Kara's out of town for a couple of weeks working with helping our grandchildren back east.
That's John's wife, by the way, Kara Green. Who was the head of our thrift shop. So these two have done a lot for this church.
So one of the guys that was in the malaria program with me, although a year ahead, is a very good friend of mine, and I visited him and stayed overnight at his house in Palm Springs yesterday.
Oh, yeah, you were in Palm.
So I've stayed, this is Ed Austin, a retired pediatric surgeon, and I've gotten back in touch with a number of the guys. We had a reunion after 40 years, so maybe 12 or 13 years ago we had a 40th reunion in Chicago, and then 2 or 3 years ago we had a 50th reunion in Chicago. And I think there were maybe 13 or 14 of the 23 that assembled in Chicago each time.
The 3 years that you were in the Peace Corps, did it affect the rest of your life, or how did it change your life after that experience?
I think it only affected me as to who I married and what career I followed. But other than that, No, I'm not sure that, I'm not sure how much of an effect it had on courting Kara, although I think a little bit. I think so I went to law school after Peace Corps, and then my first job after law school was as a deputy district attorney in Los Angeles. And after 4 years, I decided, I was single, I decided to open my own office. I hired a Thai secretary, and there were maybe 40,000 Thais living in Southern California at the time. And so I started a practice that had many Thai clients. And I think, well, you have to ask Kara, but I think she thought that was sort of interesting as I started courting her.
So you had a lot of Thai clients here. So that experience really helped you with that. Did you keep up with you kept up with speaking Thai and everything?
Well, sort of. I had a Thai-oriented practice from maybe 1974 when I finished being in the DA's office to the mid-'80s, and then at that time I joined, then I decided, I had enjoyed working with the Thais, but I just decided I didn't want to make a career of that type of work, and also I probably wasn't making as much money as I wanted to at the time, just on my own, or I had one partner.
Right.
And so for those two reasons, the kind of work and the financial aspects, I decided to move on, and I joined a large law firm and then ultimately became a court commissioner.
Right, right.
Absolutely.
This is maybe a question no one's asked, but having traveled a little bit myself, one thing is when you visit a country that is not your own, you kind of learn some things that you hope you could bring back and use here. I don't know if that happened to you. Was there any social thing in Thailand that impressed you enough that you wish we would do here in the States?
Well, sort of. After my career as a commissioner, I started to study mediation, and I was going to go into mediation after my judicial time on the bench in LA, although I ultimately decided not to do that. But as I was studying it, I realized in retrospect that the Thais were consummate mediators, and they believed in smooth interpersonal relations. And in Thailand, even in a village where people were not particularly well educated, many of the people, and perhaps all, had skills at solving disputes and things like that. And so the Thais were extremely good at enjoying life every day and getting the most out of it and avoiding disputes. Now, they also sometimes were able to do that by gossiping, and so in other words, with Thais, and this is certainly not true for all of them, but there's a perception among Americans that a Thai might be pleased with you to your face, and yet perhaps be less. They avoided confrontation, and so which made for very smooth, comfortable social relations. But yet it may be a little harder to solve problems because they didn't want to tell you that there was a problem. They just wanted to evade your solution.
Right.
So,
right.
But having said that, with the pros and cons of their approach, I still think it had much to recommend it.
Thank you so much for sharing this with me.
Anthony, thank you very much.
Thank you for your service in doing that. I think that's really cool.
You're welcome.
That you did that.
It was a great experience.
And it's just another level of being an Episcopalian. We're just out there doing things. So thank you for all you've done and for what you've done here at church, too.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with John, talking about his involvement with the Peace Corps from the early years of its creation and inception. I personally love listening to oral histories because I truly believe
that each one of our stories is truly a sacred story. So when they can be shared, it's important to listen to them and to enjoy them and to walk with that person during their journey in life. I'd like to share something with you about Lent. Not on this particular channel, but I've created a secondary channel, which at the present time is called Compline Online, because what I'm planning on doing is presenting 6 complines put together specifically for online viewing and participation. It occurred to me that when you go to a compline at church, most times they take place in the early evening or the mid-evening, and you might finish that service, be in a beautiful Zen, prayerful mode, and then you talk with friends, you have to drive home, you might eat something, you might be tempted to turn on the television, and then go to bed. Well, online Compline allows you to use Compline for what it was intended. And that means to participate in Compline and then go directly to bed. So I'm going to send out an email to this channel, the subscribers, to let them know that Compline has been uploaded, and I'll give you the link. If you'd like to, once you've gone there, if you like, you can subscribe to that channel. It's a secondary channel to this one. And please let me know if you find these complines beneficial, because in the future, if I get enough responses, I'll keep on making them. So you let me know, and then I'll try to oblige. Anyway, look forward to it. Compline Online, starting the first Sunday in Lent. And once that's uploaded, I will have 5 more. So we'll do the whole 6 weeks of Lent.